You're not ready. Not even close. I wasn't either. I know you clicked on this video because you're frustrated and you want to tell your boss what you think and walk out the door and go do something else, anything else than this with your life. But I promise you, the things that you've heard about why you should quit your job or how you should go about doing it is just wrong. I'm going to show you how I followed this process myself and how it led to me writing my first book and creating the 2 companies that I run today. But the thing is, what I realized during this process is that it actually had nothing to do with my job. It had everything to do with how I was showing up in the world, what I thought of myself, my identity, my value, and who I wanted to be in my life. So if you're ready to quit your job, or maybe you're just curious and you're thinking about what does that even mean, I want to give you a process for how to do it in a way that's actually going to make change in your life. It's not about your lousy manager. It's not about the company that you hate, or maybe you're just bored. It's about you and your own personal growth. If you're looking for best practices or a script to yell at your boss, you can click away. There's probably a bunch of videos that you're seeing right now from the algorithm that'll teach you how to do it better than I would. But if you're interested in the inner journey and you want to do something fundamental that changes your life, let's keep going. The first step in the process is just to figure out and get an honest assessment of where you are relative to the job that you're in today. On the left side of the bell curve, you got people who are in their dream job, right? Everything is not necessarily perfect, but they know that they're doing work that they love and they're surrounded by people that they trust. It's got all the markers of a place that you probably shouldn't leave. You're probably in a pretty good place, whether you're working for someone else or you're running your own business. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got a toxic environment. You're being harassed or bullied in some way. You got to leave that situation, whether it's a work situation or a relationship. But that's not where most people are on either of those 2 extremes. They're sort of dream scenario or the nightmare scenario. Most of us find ourselves somewhere in the gray middle. That's where it's kind of difficult to know. And that's why a lot of people go back and forth. You may be finding yourself in that today. Well, some days it feels like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. Other days you feel like, no, it's actually kind of good. And I like my team and there's some good things. So a big part of the first step of this process is to really dive into what's good about the place that you're at right now. What are you getting out of the experience? And what are the pieces that you may want to leave behind? If you're somebody who likes to journal, that's cool. If you want to just talk it out with a friend or just, when you're on a walk, just do the stupid pro and con list. Like, what's good about the job that you're in today? What do you like about it? What are the positive attributes? What are the things where you go home and you think, oh, I got to do this today, or I like working with this person, or I find this project interesting. And then, on the other side of the ledger, what are the frustrating things? Oh, I really get annoyed when I have to do this type of work, or I can't stand working with this one person because of the way I feel like I'm being treated. Just that process alone, just get it out of your head, get it out of your heart, and onto a page or onto an audio script. Get it out of your internal world so you can start to get a sense for yourself of how you're actually feeling about this current situation. And that'll help you do something really important, which is locate where you are and what you want to do next. Now what I want you to do is to look back at that pros and cons list, in particular the cons, the things that are frustrating, the things that you feel like are the reasons why you're quitting today, and ask yourself, is there something that you can do about them in your current job without quitting? You might decide that in a week or a month or a year that you still need to quit, but this is the first step of the process. This is how you treat it as part of your personal growth. Because there's one thing that most people don't do in a moment like this is they don't self-advocate. They don't look at the things on their list and say, well, actually, I think I should be paid more, but they never actually ask for it. They never go talk to somebody. They never stretch into a really important life skill, which is self-advocacy or learning how to negotiate for yourself. So if something like compensation is on your list, this is a great opportunity. Again, it has nothing to do with quitting your job. You might decide to quit your job, but it's not about that. It's about where's the edge for you in this moment. So there might be something, could be pay, could be job conditions, could be the people that you're working with, that you're about to quit or you're considering quitting because of that reason. But the thing is, if you don't solve it here, you're going to recreate that dynamic somewhere else. I promise you, this is what happens. If we don't solve the problems that are in front of us, those problems come back and find us in other forms in our life. It's not about whether you quit or don't. Let's assume that you will. Let's assume in 6 months you won't be working here or not. What will you have learned about yourself in the process? That's what I'm really interested in. And that's what I want you to get interested in. So when you look at those cons, the things that are really bothering you today, I'm not here to tell you those things shouldn't bother you. What I'm trying to tell you is to take a deeper look, write them down, talk to somebody about it, and start to look inside what's embedded in each of one of those cons or those frustrations or the things that are driving you mad right now. And how do you take one of them or two of them or maybe all three of them and use them for your own personal growth before you actually quit? Here's the counterintuitive part. It might sound a little bit bonkers in relation to what we just talked about in terms of self-advocacy and starting to look for the things that you could try to change. Nothing is likely to change. You think about it. Most companies, most CEOs, they're kind of the way that they are. Most people don't change. Most leaders don't change in a dramatic way. I've worked with thousands of executives, tens of thousands of managers, people who actually change in their life and become somebody different in a meaningful way. You probably can count the number of people you've met like that on one hand. The process, and this is really key, you're not starting with the assumption that you're going to change the company and you're going to change the world or you're going to change the way your CEO operates. That's not going to happen. It's about changing how you operate because you're the type of person that is going to be someone who people look at and go, oh, that's somebody who actually did something different in their life. They took a risk to become someone different. So you've got to hold this kind of weird and, right? It's not advocating for change or the company changing. It's both. You're going to advocate for yourself. You're going to look at the things on your list. You're going to push as hard as possible within the boundaries of what's reasonable in your life and your financial situation. It sounds crazy, but at the same time, I want you to assume that the company's not going to listen. They're not going to change in the ways that you want them to, but you're going to do it anyway. So let's take a quick stock of where we are. We've done two things that don't seem to go together, but are actually really important ingredients to where we're going to go next. So on the one hand, you've made your frustration list and you figured out the things that you want to see change, that you really need to change. And at the same time, you've come to an acceptance, hopefully, that those things are probably not going to change. Your boss might not even have the power to change those things, but we're going to assume that the company is what it is and it's doing what it's doing and it operates in the way that it operates. But you're approaching this process of thinking about quitting your job by making an and between these two things. You're going to advocate for yourself. You're going to use it as a growth opportunity to lean into some conversations, to go into some places of discomfort for your own benefit, for your own growth, even though it's probably not going to change the outcome. A really radical way to do this, if you have a decent relationship with your manager, is to find a way to actually just spell it all out. You might do this in your one-on-one. You might say to your manager, hey, I'd like to do something that sounds a little bit kooky, but I made this pro and con list about kind of what I like about my job and what I don't like. Can I just read it to you and share it with you? If you've got a manager who's at all a decent human being, they're going to say, yeah, I'd love to hear it, right? And you just do it gracefully. You don't do it as a victim. You don't do it as oh my God, there's all this intensity. You don't want to approach it in that way. You just approach it as, hey, I'm just doing this for myself. I'm just doing this for my own growth. And I wanted to say it out loud to the person who's got the most information, because you might be able to help me, right? You might be able to reframe some of the things on my frustration list. Maybe I'm not seeing them the right way, and I want to get into conversation with you about it. And just that alone, that's another place where we censor ourselves, where we hold ourselves back. We assume that our manager's not interested. They don't want to know. They've got their own problems. They don't have the power to change it. But for most people, and I tell you this because I've seen it 1,000 times, most people have never actually questioned that assumption and taken the risk to lean in a little bit with their manager. No matter where your manager is in the organization, they could be a new manager, or maybe you report to the CEO. If you lean into that conversation in an open way, you might be surprised at how much receptivity you get and the type of conversation, the type of dialogue that you might have with your manager. They may have wanted to have a conversation with you about some of those topics for years, but they didn't feel comfortable. They didn't know how to approach it. So by you leaning into the conversation, you're actually leading and potentially opening up a really rich ground, and the conversation might go to some really unexpected places. And reminder, this is the juicy bit. You get to do this at a job that you already don't like, right? You get to actually change something meaningful about yourself. You get to develop a new life skill in a job that you're probably going to leave. So better to do it now than in your next job, which might be 50% better. You want to be in that place and have that skill developed in the next place. So just a reminder of why we're taking this process so seriously. So now it's time to set a date. When are you actually going to leave this job? And I need you to promise me that you've done the steps before. You've gone through your frustrations. You've figured out what that growth opportunity is. You've talked to some people. Hopefully you've talked to your manager, unless that's really impossible and you've checked that there's just no way that you can do that and have a productive conversation. So now you're going to set a date. You're going to pick a date, put it on the calendar. Maybe it's a week. Maybe it's 3 months. Maybe like me, it's a year out. And I don't want you to tell your manager about that, but I want you to tell someone in your life that you've made that decision. This is a really important psychological part of it. You know from experience that once you have a date, once you have a deadline on something, it changes the emotion around it. You've made the decision, you've made the commitment. So I want you to do that for yourself, and I want you to share that with at least one person in your life that you trust. And now with that date, what do? You've put a date on the calendar, you've told somebody about it, and now you've got some time. Maybe it's a couple months, maybe it's a little bit longer, where you've decided, you've chosen, you're going to stay in this job, you're going to work on something meaningful about yourself. What's your orientation? The really important thing to remember here is you have to let things go. You're going to have some of those same experiences that you had before. Just because you put a date on the calendar doesn't mean it's all going to be rosy. You're still going to feel those impacts. You're still going to have those frustrations. You're still going to feel some of that tension, but you've made the choice. You put it down on paper. You're going to leave. So now I want you to give yourself permission to let it go. There's a bunch of stuff that you're not going to try to change anymore. That's a really mature orientation, and the one that I want you to have to the situation that you're in. It doesn't mean phoning it in. It doesn't mean ignoring or not doing your job well. I want you to do your job exceptionally well. I always want that for you. It's just about how you deal psychologically in the day in and day out on the frustration. I want you to keep your focus on the things that are in your control, the thing that you've chosen to stay there to work on. And I want you to blur your eyes and not focus so much on the things that you've decided can't change or won't change. Remember that pro and con list that we created earlier? I want you to take a look at that again, and then you can rip it up. And I want you to write something new. And it could just be a sentence. I just want you to make a declaration for yourself. I'm staying in this job to learn this about myself, and I'm not going to worry about this, that, and the other thing. Whatever those things are for you, that's how you're going to orient to the next period of time until you actually leave. All right, so now we've come to the last part of the process, the day that you're actually going to leave this job and you're going to go and do something new with your life. How do you know if it's the right day? This is the most difficult part. I want you to think about the job you're in. I want you to think about the process that you followed. And there's really only one check left. Is there any emotional charge? When you think about going to talk to your manager or your boss and telling them that you're leaving, I want you to really do some inspection, do a little inventory internally. Is there still a place of getting revenge or letting them have it or letting them know your truth? That's how you know that you're maybe not quite ready. That can be a difficult moment. And so what I really want you to focus on in this period of time until you get to that actual day is to double down and invest on the reason why you're staying. Because the more you invest in why you're staying, the more you actually make that change, the faster you'll get to that moment where you'll say, you know what? There's no emotion left here. I got what I came for. I changed in the way that was meaningful to me. I did excellent work for every single day that I was here. And now it's just mechanical. I'm just going to go tell my manager that I'm leaving. That's the place that I want to get you to. And that's when you know that you've extracted all the value from this process that you've invested in up to this point. And that's the process that I followed in myself that I feel comfortable sharing with you, and confident that if you follow these steps, if you make it about the process and not about the outcome, you will use this really important moment in your life in a way that's going to catapult you into whatever you're going to do next. And I hope you'll tell me what that is. So this process that we just went through, it is pretty simple in a way, but it's understandable to get caught at a bunch of different steps. There's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of nuance of how do you think about this? What are the challenges you face? What are the conversations that you need to have? How do you strike this balance between trying to change things that maybe aren't going to change, but still kind of show up to it the right way? And it's a perfect segue actually to introduce you to Ren. This is an AI powered coach that we created for the workplace for managers. And it's really all about how do we strike this blend between personal and professional growth? How do we orient to our work in a way where we're doing our best and we're really showing up, not just with our best selves, but doing great work and making sure that how we orient is in our own best interests and we're doing what's right for the company and the people around us. So you can create a free account with Ren and you can start chatting and you can ask Ren and it will help you navigate a lot of this terrain because I know it's subtle. I know there's a lot of nuance to it. That's how it is with personal growth and professional growth. It's not so linear, right? A lot of the things that we do at work, it's we either did it or we didn't. It's a sales goal or a metric, or we shipped code or we didn't. And the personal growth and the development side of it, it's much more nuanced. It's messier. So that's a lot of the reason why we created Ren. And I think you'll find a lot of support there. And if you have a coach or a mentor, somebody in your life that you can talk to, that's another great resource that you have as well. And you can share the results of the conversations that you're having with Ren. So you can take a moment to create an account. It's completely free. And you can use that as a resource when you're thinking about how do you quit your job? Where are you in the process? Working on your pro and cons list? How do you go talk to your manager? Those are all great conversations and things that you can ask Ren for help. And I think you'll get some pretty cool responses there.